Well, AJ, I am absolutely delighted that you chose to join me on the Wishbeads podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. I was really looking forward to this, so I'm excited to be here with you as well.
Well, I really think, I've always been a people person. And I am telling you, it was such a beautiful coincidence that I was scrolling and looking on Nextdoor. And, I kind of like look at Nextdoor with like one eye closed because most of the time it's bad news, people reporting alarming things. And I both want to be informed, but it also kind of freaks me out. And there you were sharing this beautiful message of love and community and encouragement and grace. And it was like a laser beam was just beaming down on your post. And I was so moved, as others were. As I recall, there were quite a few comments about just the energy of it. Your intention of it was so clear. And I think it was in the post, you might have mentioned your book. Anyway, I immediately was like, I got to know him. I got to know my neighbor. And we met. I bought a copy of your book. I bought a few copies. I gave them to my mom. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, this whole new collaboration or whatever has emerged from that. So thank you for your bravery. Let's start right there. What inspired you to write this post? And maybe you can share a little bit of its contents. That's sort of the idea of it.
Well, before I get into that, I just want to thank you for sharing your mom with me as well, because Billy is just incredible. She's like when she walks into a room or a virtual room, it's like the sun just came out. So really, really love her and love you as well. So thank you for all that you do and all that your family is doing to make a difference in the world.
Thank you.
And with that, that's pretty much kind of what the post was about, right? About how we can all make a difference, how we can be there for each other, how we can put love into action, and and just there's so many crazy things going on these days that sometimes we just gotta sit back and take a breath and reevaluate and realize what's really important, right? We just got to get back to simple principles of loving our neighbor and being there for each other.
I think it's absolutely apropos that your book is called Love is the Answer. And I would love for you to share for the viewers and listeners, just your story in your own words about your journey with this book and your documentary and what happened to you and ultimately how you turned what was a really terrible experience into this mission of teaching and community building and change.
Yeah. So back in 2012, I was going for a walk in my community. I lived in Howard County, Maryland at the time. And I had been there for off and on for many years, been involved in the community in many ways, involved with nonprofits and ran businesses and was just part of the community. And this one beautiful sunny day, I went for a walk and a police officer drove by me a couple times. And the third time he stopped his car, he got out. He said, "What are you doing here?" And he made a motion like this with his fingers, like, "Come to me." And I was just, first I looked around like, was he talking to somebody else? And it quickly became apparent that I was in for yet another racial profiling stop. And I had experienced many of those driving or shopping, but never going for a peaceful walk in my own community. That was like next level stuff to me. And he immediately set out accusing me of breaking into homes and just doing nefarious things and threatened me with arrest. And I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. So I finally, after a while, I said, "Officer, really, why did you stop me?" And he said, "Because we're stopping everyone who looks like they're not from this neighborhood." He pretty much told me his agenda at that point. And so at that point, while he's threatening to confiscate my belongings and search me and arrest me and all those things, I started to school him on the various amendments of the Constitution that protected my rights. And he decided to shut off at that point. He didn't know what to do. So he turned around, went back to his car and refused to get out of his car. And I'm standing there like, okay, I really am confused right now. And I'm also thinking, I don't want to get shot because I've seen too many instances of things going really, really bad really quickly. So I eased over about 10 feet away from the car. I said, "Sir, if we're done here, I'm going to continue my walk." And I said it over and over again, and he never responded. And so I finally turned around and started walking away. Um, Made a little video about it as I was leaving, and then I shut the video off and I called my attorney because something like that had happened just weeks prior when I was driving away from the mall to go pick up my wife. And similar incident, which didn't result in anything. They actually wrote me up for a bunch of things that I didn't do, and they all got thrown out because the court knew that it was bogus. So as soon as I called my attorney, three cars pulled up. And I had just gotten the words out of my mouth about what happened. And he said, "Just don't worry about it. Get out of there." He said the same thing happened to me a couple of weeks ago with me and my girlfriend. And so these three cars rolled up, and they got out of their cars, the first officer and two others. And one was a supervisor, a corporal. And they ran up to me and nose to nose yelling at me. One guy had his hand on his taser. Another guy was ready to tackle me. And I said, "My attorney's on speakerphone and he hears everything." And they all stopped, took a step back. And that was the start of my journey of never wanting to have to go through anything like this again, never wanting any of my family members to go through this again. It was the start of a journey of saying, I'm going to do something about it. And at first, I didn't know what I wanted to do, so I wrote an article that got read by thousands of people all over the country. And it was basically just a letter to parents saying, "Hey, I know some of this is probably happening to you, and just in case things like this is happening to your kids, here's a little something you can give them." Kind of that living room talk that Black people have to do with their kids, to tell them, here's what you do when you get stopped by the police for doing absolutely nothing at all but other than being Black. And that article wound up getting read by a lot of people and got a lot of positive feedback. And then I decided to, just try to get the police department to acknowledge that they had done something wrong, and they refused. So I reported it to Internal Affairs, to NAACP, to the Human Rights Commission, and I got nowhere. And so then I decided, okay, I'm going to have to tell a bigger story because no one's listening. And I sat down the journey of making a film addressing this issue of racial profiling. And no sooner did I do that than I got targeted for harassment by members of that police department. And that went on for about a year, being followed, being stopped, my wife being followed, being stopped, threats. It was pretty ugly. And it got to the point where a female officer saw me in a Starbucks one day. And she was not plain clothes, but she was just in her gym clothes. She had just left the gym. And she came up to me and she said, I know you. And I have a bad memory, so I didn't know if I had met her or not in the past. But I said, "I'm sorry, but I don't remember us meeting." And she said, "I'm a Howard County police officer, and your likeness has been distributed through the department,
Oh,
and you need to watch your back because they're after you." And I said, "Thank you for that." And she said she knew that I was making a film by that time. They all did. So the next thing she said was, "When you get done making that film, I need you to tell another story. Please tell the story about sexual harassment in police departments because that's happening to me."
Mm.
And so through her pain, she was able to come to me and warn me about something, but also cry out to say, "Hey,
Yeah.
don't stop there because there's other
Yeah.
issues, at stake." And so that really blew me away. But it also told me, okay, these things that I think are happening are actually happening, and I'm in
They're real.
danger. And it was a scary time. It was a scary time. And at the time, I was a veteran with undiagnosed PTSD. So I hadn't been to the VA. I'd been out of the military for over 20 years. Didn't know that I was going through certain things, right? Certain triggers that would happen that would just put me in a really dark place with depression and other things. And so that's going to come in later, because this is a story of redemption and reconciliation. But those dark times that I was going through when I was getting these threats and being followed and being stopped and harassed, um, I wanted to hurt somebody. And that was not my character. That's something that I really tried hard to stay away from, that side of my being, because my father was an alcoholic, and he beat my mom, and he terrorized us in the household. And so I saw that, but I never wanted that to be me, right? Never wanted to resort to violence. And even, when I was in the military, I was a peacekeeper. My part of my job was to make sure that we never had to fire the nuclear missiles that were at our base. And so I was in public affairs, and I did a lot to keep the peace. Um, my colleagues and I, that was an important role that I took very seriously, and I carried that with me as part of my duty to this country afterwards. And so in my household, I had my father, and on the other side, I had my mother, who just exuded just love came out of her pores. I mean, she embodied love, and that's what I decided to model. And so it's really hard when I was feeling like they were coming after me, and more importantly, that they might hurt my wife. And so there were days that I'd wake up and I'd have to decide whether I was going to continue down a path of try to make things better, or whether I was going to go out and hurt somebody before they hurt us.
Mm.
And I made the right decision, more than one time, to keep down that path. And it didn't really hit me how important that was until September 25th, 2014. So 2.5 years after that initial incident, that I'd taken a journey across the country, and I wound up in Hawaii. And I was in the waters of Kailua Beach in Oahu. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of peace wash over me as I was in that water. It was like a baptism. And I felt in my spirit that the words were coming to me: if you want to do something about this issue, you got to do it with love. You can't hurt someone, even if they try to hurt you.
Yeah.
And to me, that day was the changing moment in my life, where I decided, no matter what they try to take my life, I'm going to love them.
So powerful.
Yeah, so that's what led to the film coming out the way that it did, Walking While Black, Love is the Answer, because initially I wanted to make a film that was just going to get people fired. And what happened is that I wound up making a film, my team and I, that teaches people how to love each other, and starting with police, learning how to love the people they serve, but also a hurt community, to help them learn how to love the police. Get beyond the badge and gun, and for the police to get beyond the hoodie, or in my case, a black man in a Tommy Bahama shirt walking down the street.
In your own neighborhood.
Right, in my own neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so, the film came out. It's been seen all over the country. Police departments are actually the number one group that's licensing the film to use it.
Which fills me with so much hope. I mean, I know we have a long way to go, and it's certainly a culture and a power dynamic that has been going on for some time. So it perpetuates itself until someone like you comes along and says, hey, if I can transform my own personal pain and make a conscious decision to lean and learn through love, then you can do the same thing. And we have to have this shared vision of what it's like to work together. And if there was any type of theme for 2020, it would be that, in so many aspects, if we're talking about social justice, racial equality, policing, community building, pandemic solving, crossing the political divide. I don't know what part it is inside of us that insists upon this. I don't know, the lower side of us, you talk so eloquently about the darker parts of you, the parts that are from trauma, maybe as a child, but also just PTSD, and that it is this temptation to not just temptation, but this struggle of what are the choices you're going to make?
Right.
Which path are you going to go down? And I just think it's so beautiful of and such a beautiful testament to your own mission, how much you continually go back to love, and now see evidence of its effects in the work that you're doing.
Yes, it's been pretty amazing. I mean, I'm blown away every day when I think about what has happened, from that June day in 2012 until 8 years later, end of 2020, and how literally every day there's a police chief, a sheriff, a mayor, or someone in power who's reaching out to me. The district attorneys around the country, they're starting to wake up to this, and I'm excited about that because they're really they're the the glue, right?
Yeah.
Everybody listens to them, and so we're seeing amazing things happening. But I didn't get here on my own. I actually, many times during those very, very dark days, I would call on someone. I would call a friend of mine, Melvin Russell, who was in Baltimore. He was a chief, one of 4 chiefs in that police department, and he and I had gotten to know each other through a TV series that I had done that was on Fox in that local market years prior.
Mm-hmm.
And that show was all about getting people to come together and do good things to help each other. It was called Good Fellas of Baltimore.
Oh,
And
I love that.
it was a lot of fun. It was, mafia theme, but we were actually good fellas who were trying to help people. So
That's so great.
So we worked with the police department, and I got to know Melvin, and he was one of a few people that I knew at that time that wore the uniform but treated people like they were family.
Mm.
And so I would call him, and I would call him during very specific times. It would be those days that I was on the verge of doing something really bad because I was afraid for my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I was getting death threats at times. And so so I would call Melvin, and no matter what, he would pick up. Even if he was in the middle of a meeting, he'd pick up. And sometimes he would just say, AJ, I'm in the middle of a meeting. I can't talk right now, but I love you.
Oh, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful.
And he and I talk about it now. I didn't talk to him about what he did for me for years, but he saved my life. He saved other people's lives because there were days that I didn't know what I was going to do. It was that dark. It was that PTSD that got triggered that had me thinking someone's going to kill me and my wife. And he would just tell me one little thing, I love you. And that would change everything for me. And I'd hang up the phone and I'd reconsider. And sometimes I'd just lay back on my bed and cry and just try to summon up the strength to do the right thing. And so Melvin is in the film. He's one of the key people in the film. I asked him to be in it. He told a beautiful story, and he's one of the stars of the film. But more importantly, he and I are walking this out, and we're going around the country together on webinars now.
That's
doing
great.
virtual meetings and teaching people that thing that he showed me, right? And can I tell you about what happened with the PTSD diagnosis?
Please, yeah.
So it was because of, and this is how the universe works, right? If you put certain energy out, then that energy is going to come back to you, right?
Right.
And so after making the film and deep into writing the book, I was deep into writing the book to go with the film. I had forged relationships with a bunch of police officers by then, but there were a few that really stood out to me because of what they did. There was a person in Santa Monica Police Department, Derek Jacob, who's a friend now. There was another person who was with the Hawthorne PD, who started Coffee with a Cop, Robbie Williams, and a couple others. And these are people who are cops, who are veterans also, who told me, AJ, you got to go to the VA.
Wow.
And I had never wanted to go to the VA for several reasons. But I finally did in 2018. And this was after the film came out, but before the book came out. And because of their urging, these are cops who told me you got to go to the VA. I went to the VA and they immediately diagnosed me with PTSD and other things that I got in the military that I never knew. I'd go through these feelings that I never knew where they came from, and they were able to make sense of it all for me. So it's Veterans Day tomorrow. I'm a service disabled veteran. Um, I have cops to thank
Oh,
for my healing, for my, and I got I'm I'm not perfect. I'm in, this is another thing is I encourage people to go and get a therapist
yeah.
and treat yourself to better mental health. And so I have a therapist through the VA that I talk with at least once every couple of weeks. It's 3 or 4 times a month. And so cops were the ones who told me to go and get help, and I did, and it changed my life. And,
Isn't that so? I mean, it's so powerful, AJ. I mean, there's a bunch of things that you're saying that I just want to reiterate, especially to people that are listening and finding right now that they are stressed, they're feeling like their back is against the wall, or that there isn't hope, or that everybody else has it figured out and they don't. And yet, the fact that you are acknowledging and really appreciating that this perceived enemy, the cops,
yeah,
the source of your trauma, anxiety, all this injustice, actually, because of this journey led to your healing. It just is a powerful reminder that we can be so stuck in our concepts, whatever they may be, and
yeah,
in our perception of our own truth, that we become blinded to what may lie within the other. And I think of that right now, even as we, in the time of this recording, we're still mulling the election results. But, you saw when they announced Biden and Harris presumptive, the winners of the election, there was all of this jubilation, but there was a lot of also kind of there was some contentious energy just in terms of like the other team.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
thought to myself, elections are really they are about, at the essence of it, coming together to celebrate democracy and the right to vote, the right to have a say in our democracy. And ultimately, we must figure out a way to come together as a country. And that's something, when we shut ourselves off to the listening that can come from opinions other than our own, we are limiting our ability to learn. And perhaps in your case, the miracles to occur. And
right.
I just don't, it's like, thank you for sharing and just highlighting that, because it shows, and you are such a like a graceful, sweet, powerful soul. But it's an important lesson for us so that we can all get caught in our concepts. And yet it's from that humility of really listening and keeping yourself open to the possibility of what the other has to say or give or do. It's powerful.
Yeah, it really is. And I surround myself with things that remind me, of what zone to stay in. You
Yeah.
know,
That's
um,
kind of what Wishbeads is all about, right? Have a
so
visible reminder.
you mean that?
Because I think we
Yes,
forget how
yes,
powerful we are. And you
yes.
also, AJ, just in thinking about what you shared, you kept on using the phrase like, I decided to do this, or I chose to. And I love that perspective of empowerment, that you do have a choice about your actions. You have a choice to reach out for help. You have a choice to give yourself space to cry. There's so many things that we have that when we're feeling powerless, we can remember how powerful we are, or how surrounded we are in love, even if we don't necessarily know it. What can people do to remember that there is someone that they can call, that there are groups who are ready to listen and love you and send you support? Um, and then when you're meeting with people who are also experiencing, they're right in the thick of, building a relationship with themselves and their community police officers and things like that.
Mhm.
What are some of the actual takeaways do you suggest for people to build that trust again, to remember that they are the architects of their own destiny?
A lot of it comes down to relationships. and we have shut ourselves off. And, in this cancel culture, right? If people don't think exactly how we think, then social media will help us to shut them out of our life.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
And so we have to get past that. Maybe for some of us, just turn off electronic gadgets for a week and
Yeah.
and get back to real conversations with people. We're so quick to put people down or shut them out or tune them out just because they have different thoughts about something. And I'm not trivializing it. Some of these divides are deep and wide, right? The issue of Black people facing brutality and oppression in the United States goes back 400 years, right? So it's not something trivial. It's not
Right.
something that we can just get over it, right? There is systemic racism in the United States. There is oppression, and so when it comes to things like that, these very real deep divides, we just have to find a way through communication, relentless communication with each other, to bridge that divide, to build bridges and tear down these walls, right?
Yeah. And I love that one of your solutions, AJ, is about community gardens. I
Yeah,
think sometimes we think that the solutions have to be very complicated. I mean, how could you possibly undo 400 years, right?
right,
But
right.
I love that in your book, and in your work, you're really talking about it's the little things like I love that coffee with a cop
Yeah,
or, making a community garden together and really
right,
having the patience and care to tend to something together and
right.
have it bear fruits and vegetables in this case.
Yes, yes, yeah,
But I think there's such a beauty in these simple things that we can do that we forget the power of being in nature, the power of building things together, of listening to people. Or I was just actually doing an interview with this wonderful woman, Tiffany Shalane, who wrote a book called 24/6, and she talks about the benefits of a tech Shabbat. So it's only one day. I mean, I can't even for myself fathom to take like a week away from technology, but I think if I could do a day a week,
yeah,
that's pretty
yeah,
good.
yeah. Or maybe some people just need to start with an hour,
Just an
just
hour, just like go for a walk
right,
and leave
right,
your phone at home. You'll
yeah.
be fine. But these baby steps are quite powerful because we are convincing ourselves that this is the world. And yet, no, this is just what we're experiencing right now, but we have the power to choose. I don't know if people are lucky enough to get to swim in the oceans of Hawaii, but the power of nature is a healer. It's a
Yeah.
healer.
Yeah, it really is. When I lived in Maryland, I went for walks in the woods, and that was just as powerful to me as when I lived in Santa Monica and I went for walks on the beach.
Yeah.
So just find a place that resonates with your soul,
Yeah.
and go there. And
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 go there.
yeah, and it doesn't have to be literal, right? It could be figurative. There could be some
Yeah.
place that you go in your mind, right, in
Yeah.
your heart, where it grounds you, it centers you, and it gets you to a place where you can consider different ways of dealing with stress and
Yeah.
stressful people.
Yeah. I just saw this beautiful thing on Facebook that there was a woman who was very old, like maybe in her 90s, and she had Alzheimer's, and she was a prima ballerina back in the day, like a long, long time ago.
Okay.
And they put um, Swan Lake and Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake in her on headphones. And there's this frail woman who suddenly comes to life and starts in her wheelchair doing
Mm.
these beautiful, the choreography of Swan Lake. And
Oh,
they cut to this footage of her back in the day. And I'm getting chills just remembering this image because you see that there are things like music that can activate whole other worlds that come to life to you. I mean, this woman does not know where she is because of Alzheimer's. And yet, deep inside of her was this beauty and truth and artistry that
mm,
just came to life. And you watch her so gracefully in her wheelchair, and it's like a miracle. And I
wow.
think, especially in this time, and even when I'm leading virtual wish circles every month, to go on these astral vacations and give ourselves the experiences, whether it's through music or an image that you put on your desktop, or a candle that smells like the evergreens, the pine forest that you imagine camping in one day. There are
Yeah.
things that we can do to soothe our soul, which in turn changes our energy, which changes the way we see the world, which then changes our actions. And we're more powerful than we realize to take care of ourselves, take care of our beings.
Yeah, that's right. And I got to thank you for this too, because these have been a reminder to me, as well. And I kind of fiddle around with it all the time, and I'm doing like this, and it reminds me to go back to that wish that I put inside here,
Yeah.
to keep striving for that. And for me, it's simply keep loving people,
Yeah.
until that day comes where, everyone that I can influence is living out those principles, those love is the answer principles. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
AJ, tell me, tell me what, if you can. So it's funny. I've been wrestling with this idea that people have a concept that they don't share their wish out loud.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to encourage more people to think there's an energy by sharing your wish. You don't have to, you don't have to. But what, like, if your wish came true, what would the world look like? I mean, I know you were talking about love, and do you have like a specific wish that you have for your Love is the Answer mission and message? How can we support you with making your big wishes come true?
For me, it looks like the pledge that we created for the Love is the Answer pledge, that everyone I know and everyone that I don't know around the world would live out those principles.
Can you
Uh,
share the pledge with us? Can you read that out loud?
yeah, sure. So I pledge to learn about the people in my community. And love is the answer. Love is an acronym. So L.O.V.E, you'll see that in the pledge. I pledge to learn about the people in my community, to unconditionally open my heart to their needs as if they were all immediate family members, to volunteer to be part of the solution in their life during both good and challenging times, and to empower everyone I meet to do the same as if our lives depended on each other.
Mm,
That's it.
it's so beautiful.
That's my wish.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And AJ, I feel like you and I will probably have more things cooking together
I hope
because
so.
I would love nothing more than to support you and your mission. It's a beautiful, powerful message of love and commitment and community. And there is not a community in this world that couldn't benefit from participating and really understanding that we are in this together, and that life is so much richer by the diversity of our, not just our racial makeup, but the diversity of thought, the diversity of opinion, the diversity of experiences, the diversity of age. All of it makes all of our collective lives more enriched. And when we can understand that we don't have to be so afraid, we can open ourselves up to the collective good, and then build whatever we need to from there, solutions and whatever, because we've got big issues coming down the pipeline, big ones,
Yeah,
because
that's right.
we do. Like, we'd be blind to think that we don't have big issues, happening. It doesn't matter where you are, but together we are stronger. And I just love the work that you're doing. And I'm going to include your pledge in the notes of the podcast, both on video and in audio. So for
Awesome.
everybody listening and watching, share it, find out there's going to be links to AJ's book, and then ways in which you can get involved if you want to license the film to be seen in your community, or just reach out. There's going to be all kinds of resources for you. But AJ, I just can't thank you enough for being on the podcast and sharing your story and the amazing work that you do.
Thank you for having me. And I really love what you're doing, and what you're just helping people with, and keep it up. And I'm here to support you as well. And I want to give a shout out to one more person, Phillip Shepard, who is not a cop, but he is a veteran. And he walked me through the process of getting service disabled status with the VA. He shared his heart, his time,
Oh,
and he's a great Santa Monica guy. You may recognize his name from Survivor. He was on Survivor a couple of times, and
oh, cool.
went by the name The Specialist there.
Ah, yes. Well, I
Yeah.
remember him from your documentary. Yeah.
So he's a great guy, a good friend, and he's living it out. I'm gonna have to get him some Wishbeads as well, so I'll get in touch with you about that. But I thank you for everything that you're doing, and for the platform to just be able to share a little bit of my story, and hopefully people will take it to heart that love really is the answer.
Oh, that is my wish as well. And I just, I think that the timing couldn't be more beautiful. And I'm so grateful that you made that post on Nextdoor, put it that way.
Thank you. Yeah,
You
some good
just
things
never
do
know
happen
when you're
from
connected with your community, who you're going to meet.
that. That's right. Thank
Oh, AJ, we wish you all the best. We are going to be supporting your wish. We're going to be spreading the message far and wide, and then who knows what will unfold as a result. I am
you.
cheering you on.
Thank you so much. Much love and much aloha.
Aloha.